And so let's move on to the dogs in the NFL. The guys moving to the NFL or the ones coming back. So we're kind of spreading. Is it good news, bad news, good news, bad news? So let's start with the good news on our little roller coaster here. The guys that are coming back in 2025, it's graphic official. I'm not. If there's one thing I know in this world, it's that internet graphics don't lie. So all these guys have released like a graphic, like I'm coming back to Georgia, or they've set it to it's been reported and everything like that. So to this point, the three I've heard of, the three biggest that we know are coming back next year: Christian Miller on the defensive line. I think he was Georgia's most disruptive defensive lineman at times this year. I think he obviously flirted with the portal a year ago, and Georgia was able to get him back. But to see him come back in 2025, I think that's big. Georgia really needed we knew what some of these guys they were going to lose to the draft, so they really needed to keep as much continuity as possible. So getting Christian Miller back is big. Getting Dylan Bell back, Dylan Bell is a guy who I kind of anticipated, taking that number one receiver role in 2024, and just to be frank, like I feel like Dylan Bell had a disappointing year. Like Arian Smith got a lot of the hate for the drops, but it was far from a one-man show as far as those drops went. Like Dylan Bell didn't have as many egregious ones, but I'd say that one in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame was definitely his worst drop of the season. But it is what it is. I still believe in Dylan Bell, especially with how elusive, or I shouldn't say elusive, versatile of a offensive weapon he is. I think hopefully Georgia is able to come in. Maybe Noah Thomas and Zion Branch become two of their go-to guys at wide receiver, and Dylan Bell is able to kind of be that third or fourth guy, and maybe get some of those reverses like they like to do with him, hand him the ball a little bit, because he's a really physical runner and he's a dynamic athlete. So I'm glad Dylan Bell is coming back next year. I think he's got a lot to improve on. And then I think the biggest news on the offensive side of the ball is Trevor Etienne announcing he's coming back for one more year. So he was kind of a rent-a player, but he's going to be a Georgia a dog over a Gator because he ended as a dog. Now he's got 2 years as a dog. Etienne will officially be a dog, and Florida fans, that'll be a distant memory that he played for Florida. But I felt like at times, I think Carson Beck, I think, was Georgia's best offensive player this season. But in terms of playmakers, Trevor Etienne was Georgia's best playmaker the entire season. And unfortunately, that included the time where he was hurt, because you saw what Georgia's run game, like how limited it was without Trevor Etienne. Like, Frazier gutted it out, and Nate Frazier, I think the duo of Nate Frazier and Trevor Etienne should be, the best duo of running backs in the SEC next year. Like, I think I'm a firm believer that Georgia's got a really good running back room, especially when you consider how injured they were this year. Like, you get Roderick Robinson and hopefully Branson Robinson back next year, and you can go 4 deep with like pretty solid running backs. But I think Etienne and Nate Frazier are both. Nate Frazier, I'm really excited to see as a sophomore. Like, that guy popped a lot as a true freshman, and to get him and Etienne, who's definitely the more of a workhorse back, get some of those tough yardage, and using Frazier as the change of pace kind of guy. Like, I really like that, the prospects of that going into 2025. I think Georgia's run game, should be improved. But I mean, this leads us to the other one, the other side of dogs to the NFL. Like, they're losing a lot on this offensive line. So Dylan Fairchild had eligibility left guard. He's going pro. Jared Wilson, I believe, had eligibility left. He's the center. He's going pro. Tate Ratledge, the right guard, is going pro. Xavier Truss is graduating, I believe. He's been at Georgia for a while. I think he's out of eligibility. So you're losing 4 starters on the offensive line, but you're losing 4 starters from an offensive line that wasn't very good. So, is it addition by subtraction? Do you get some of these young guys to come in Ernest Green played pretty well as a true freshman. Monroe Freeling had his moments. He got whooped against Notre Dame, but this guy was a former 5-star and he's got abilities. So those are probably Georgia's tackles going into next year. You got um, oh man, Micah Morris. I was blanking on there for a sec. Micah Morris played a decent amount at guard in Tate Ratledge's absence. Like I think he's looked good at times. I don't know. I think Bobo was the backup center. I don't know if Bobo is a starter next year. And then you got maybe like a Jaw Jackson or something, right? Or Bo Hughley. Like maybe one of these guys steps up. One of these guys that was a freshman or sophomore from this past year. So how Georgia's recruited the offensive line in recent years, and I know a lot of people are calling for Stacey Searles' head and all that, but I tend to think this was just a down year for whatever reason. Maybe it's a trend, and Georgia's offensive line is not good enough moving forward, and some changes need to be made. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. If it's another year like 2024, as far as running the ball goes, I mean, yeah, I think changes definitely have to be made. Like I'm not looking at it in front of me, but I saw a tweet a couple days ago. I want to say it was from Graham Coffey, that was showing Georgia's SEC ranks in the run game since Kirby Smart's been there, and it's like first, second, third, first, like multiple firsts, and then like a fifth or sixth, and then this year is 15th. Like it's just the clear outlier, and maybe it's an outlier and they bounce back and have a great run game next year, or maybe it's the start of a disturbing trend and Georgia's got to get back to being elite in the trenches and running the football. So that remains to be seen. But the other guys that have officially announced that they are going pro, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Malachi Starks. I don't think those three surprise anybody. Malachi Starks was hitting folks with the stroking the chin thinking emoji. One of my favorites, by the way. But so he got people's hopes up. I think that he was thinking about coming back for his senior year, but those three guys are projected first rounders. Jalen Walker, the Butt Kiss Award winner this year. Those were no brainers to me. Like I said, Ratledge, Fairchild, Jared Wilson, Arian Smith also had eligibility left, I believe. He's accepted an invitation to the Senior Bowl already. Smile Munden is going pro. Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson on that defensive line. Like Warren Brinson was probably the most consistent of Georgia's interior defensive linemen this year. I don't think I haven't heard an official word on Terrian Ingram Dawkins. Has he announced? Let me look. Do a quick Google search on our boy Taron Ingram Dawkins. I know this is what the people want to hear on a radio. Okay, so no, I've yet to see Ingram Dawkins make it official. I think he's also one of the more disruptive interior defensive linemen that Georgia had this past year. So, returning Christian Miller, hopefully Ingram Dawkins, added with some of these freshmen and sophomores that were big time recruits, like maybe an Elijah Griffin is a guy who makes an impact year one. Maybe Isaiah Gibson is a edge rusher that makes an impact year one. Like I always hesitate to put too much on true freshmen. Like you should never rely on the true freshmen. But man, if they're one of those guys that break out, it's really what sets a team off. Like you look at like a Georgia, obviously Jake Fromm being a true freshman, or like Andrew Thomas, guys that were just immediate impact guys as true freshmen, and how that impacted Georgia. A Brock Bowers or someone like that. So it really, Nate Frazier kind of should have been one of those guys with how good he was. Georgia's offense just wasn't very good. He should have been the cherry on top, right? Like if you had a pretty good pass game, a good running game, and that true freshman should have set you off. It wasn't a guy you were really relying on coming into the season. But yeah, so curious to see what happens there. And then obviously the one I've left out is Carson Beck as well. He had eligibility left. He could have potentially come back to school, but he is going pro. And I'm glad Carson Beck is going pro, and not going to some other, like, taking like an NIL deal. Like there was those rumors that like, oh, maybe he stays in college for another year and Miami convinces him to come down or something. Like, I'm just glad that Carson Beck, like, this is a guy who doesn't get enough credit in terms of like, this is the NIL portal era we live in. And this guy, you know, worked hard, waited his turn, didn't just leave at the first sign of not starting, didn't leave at the second sign of not starting, and then, worked his way up and was able to, give Georgia 2 good years. So